Once again, we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Bryan Kohberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latex gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Philip J. Fry, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show on a special, what's today? Sunday? Labor Day weekend?
Yes, sir.
Labor Day weekend show. Big Blue's with me. It's been a while. How you doing, my man?
Good, man. Been busy, you know. This week I started my paramedic schooling.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a few days where I've been getting like 3 hours of sleep, man.
Dang.
Work. I wasn't able to get my schedule put in because I wasn't sure I got accepted to the program because they were so full.
Yeah.
So my work for the first month, I work every time I have school. So I go from work to school and then go home, sleep, and then go back to work.
Yeah, well, man, that's a grind, brother. That's a hard grind, man. Well, power to you, my man. Hopefully you get through all this schooling and stuff and light speed, and you'll be working less stressful of a schedule, my man. So today, for today's topic or today's podcast, we're gonna be talking back into the Idaho 4 murders of Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle, and Bryan Kohberger, who is standing trial here pretty soon in reference to the murders. And there's been a lot of debate going back and forth about Bryan Kohberger. Had he done it? Did he do it? Is there any evidence? You know, a lot of people say there's no evidence of any of these things happening. I know a lot of rumors and speculation have come out here recently about, potential crimes that Bryan Kohberger could have or may have committed. Everything from breaking into the chem lab to breaking into a female students of his apartment and potentially setting up cameras. I think that was alleged at one point. They found IDs, inside of a glove, inside of a box, and it's been alleged that something had to do with some kind of issue when it comes to Bryan Kohberger. There's also been the students there who had reported Bryan Kohberger to WSU, which started an investigation, which ended up leading into his termination. All these wrongful acts. Well, I got to give it up to Forensic Frenzy. She put out a video like 2 days ago, and it's in the description, referencing what we're going to be talking about. And I'm going to show part of it, and then we're going to break it down. Let's see. So let me share this real quick. I'm not going to share the whole video or anything like that. I've already talked with her as well. I'm just going to share a little bit of it. And this is in reference to Rule 404B.
Nonetheless, the Forensic Frenzy YouTube channel has briefly discussed the possibility that law enforcement officials are aware of other crimes or potentially bad acts committed by the defendant, Bryan Kohberger, and could still be investigating those crimes actively. That could explain the details and documents that the defense has repetitively requested and either been denied entirely or currently find themselves asking for again and again. It was an epiphany to a decent number of our viewers who could simply not cope with the idea. Some came to the defense of Bryan Kohberger, but those individuals were all but readily prepared. So let's take a listen to a small clip from the closing argument of Prosecutor Ashley Jennings. This clip can be found around 7 hours, 1 minute, 30 seconds into the most recent court hearing in the state of Idaho versus Bryan Kohberger, dated August 29th, 2024.
I think another possibility that the court should consider, particularly after looking at Exhibit C and those line graphs where we're talking about peaks in media coverage, is sealing some potential hearings coming up. And the defense may not want to seal certain hearings for good reason. We're not asking the court at this point to seal all hearings going forward, but the state believes that there may be certain evidentiary hearings. For example, if the state files 404B notices or motions in limine related to the evidence, some of that information might be extremely prejudicial, and the state.
So the prosecution is going to be filing some 404B, whatever she said that word, cases against them. They're going to have hearings referencing this 404B, and it could be very prejudicial to Bryan Kohberger. For one, I think that answers a question as far as, why doesn't the prosecution coming out and defending themselves or saying things or bringing out evidence? One, they don't want to give, they do want to give Bryan Kohberger a fair trial, so they don't want to give the public more information that is required that could possibly make the public think he's more guilty than they already do, right? So she brought up 404B. Go ahead, Blue.
It's like, then they'll right away want a mistrial and then have to start all this over again.
Right. Yeah. And so let's look up at what 404B and what the prosecution is trying to do. 404B or 404 and Rule 404 is Idaho Rules of Evidence, character evidence, crimes, or other acts. Now, A is character evidence, but they're going to be doing 404B, crimes, wrongs, or other acts. Prohibited uses, evidence of a crime, wrong, or other act is not admissible. Prove a person's character in order to show that a particular occasion the person acted in accordance with the character. So they're going to say that other acts that he had done is going to show a pattern of what ended up leading up to what ended up happening. So to me, I think that kind of leads more into like the possible break-ins of other people. What do you think, Big Blue?
I think it could be that, or breaking into the school or something. Maybe some charges there.
Right.
But the ID, like you said, the young lady helped set up all the cameras and everything, and then she felt like it might have been him breaking in. It could be that case too.
Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, we go look at such and such. We don't see these crimes being associated with Bryan Kohberger. They've put a gag order on this case, and there's a lot of stuff that's no longer readily available. For instance, I'm not sure if you know, but if you go back and you try to look up the calls of, I think it's calls of service for Pullman Police Department and what they did, they have blanked out between November 2022 and September of 2023, and it just jumps from October to September. It's pretty weird. So if there was the only thing, and Mark, one of our viewers, is the one who brought that up to my attention, and one of the only things, if the only thing that I can think of is that could do something like that, is a court order sealing certain information. So it does sound like there were calls for service in those for something that ended up getting sealed. Now, are there other calls for service that are getting sealed in the area? Perhaps it's not just this case and they're sealing obviously all calls of service. But what do you think, Big Blue?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're gonna have to go through court and put all the information out there and try to see. Sorry, I got a headache today. With what was it again?
That's fine, man. Let's move it on. So the part 2 says permitted uses. Notice in criminal case, the evidence may be admissible for another purpose, such as proving motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, identity, absence of mistake, or lack of accident. In a criminal case, the prosecutor must file the service, serve reasonable notice of the general nature of such evidence, and the prosecutor intends to offer at trial. So they're planning on bringing up some sort of crime, act, or wrongdoing that they're investigating. Now, the other crime, wrong act, or wrongdoing that we have heard, as far as that's been rumored out there, as well as a possible break-in into the WSU Chem Lab. Now, what's in the WSU Chem Lab is not just chemicals. We went through WSU's Chem Lab homepage, and we found that all supplies are located in the Chem Lab, including office supplies, probably security supplies, chemicals. So various of things are left in that Chem Lab, and so that's one thing that I think everybody's also heard. Do you think this could be, one of those? I don't know if this would fall, if that crime would fall under this motion, because I think that crime there had something specifically to do with the crime that he's being accused of. And I think this 404B is other crimes to show, well, I mean, it does say to show motive or intent.
Yeah, I was gonna say
It could be the one from WSU Chem Lab.
it can, but it could be maybe some somebody put this here and let me put it out there, because it could be evidence of other crimes which are admitted to show motive or intent and prove that of their character, which is true. But to me, it could be a number of things. It could have been like the other case where he helped that young lady set up the cameras, the security system, and then maybe broke into her place. Maybe that's one of the IDs they found.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe there's the other IDs they found is from other victims that had stuff broken into.
All right. Tim asks, where's the evidence for the break-ins? Was it all stated in a prosecution document somewhere? No, I was told about these break-ins from somebody close to the case. A couple of people's close to the case. Obviously, what was his name? Howard Bloom. Sorry about that. I blanked out. Howard Bloom on our interview also stated that he had his other sources. I don't talk to the news nations or the news media or whoever those guys are. I don't talk to them, but he has a source within their network that's also stating that there was an investigation into Bryan Kohberger referencing the Chem Lab. Now, what I had heard, and I didn't bring it up until Howard Bloom had brought it up himself, and I even told him in the interview, I was like, yeah, I heard something similar to that, but and the reason I don't bring it up is because if it's not out there yet, I'm not going to be the one to put it out there. Kind of similar with some of the other things that I've known. And I've proven myself a couple of times where I pulled out, I think it was a couple of court documents weeks before, or information about the court documents a couple of weeks before they were actually put out there for everybody to see. Well, anyways, he was told that Bryan Kohberger, or he's under investigation, Bryan Kohberger, that is, for breaking into the Chem Lab, and they're looking at him for possibly building a bomb. Now, is it possible? Yeah. I mean, if you go look at the guy that attempted to assassinate former President Trump, he had bombs and stuff and set up in his car. I don't know. What do you think, Blue?
I mean, I think it could be probably associated with that case, but I don't know if I'm thinking because it happened on a college campus, they have their own police department, and I wonder if they would try and be working with them. So maybe later on, if you start seeing the documents come from the school police department, then it would be probably associated with that case, unless they just turned everything over to the Moscow Police Department.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Turn everything over to the Moscow Police Department?
For them to do the case of the burglary and break-ins in the school, because most of the time they're handled internally by because most colleges have their own police department. You
see that you bring up an interesting point there, Big Blue, and I think this could be some sort of evidence, and Mark had pointed this out. Evidence referencing that they are investigating this break-in is the fact that if, and this is my speculation, I don't think that Moscow PD knew who Bryan Kohberger was until December 19th. I've said that multiple times. I don't think they even looked at the cameras in Pullman and put two and two together that vehicle that's arriving at 5 a.m., if they even went that far into the camera system, see 5 a.m. that the vehicle was his. Now, if they didn't go and look at Pullman's, camera system, according to Mark, I haven't checked this out yet, but he was telling me that there's only like a 30-day deal where you can preserve that footage on the traffic cams. After 30 days, it's wiped out or deleted if you don't preserve it. And there's a camera that is, I think, on 270 heading from Pullman towards Moscow, that should have determined if Bryan Kohberger had went left towards Moscow or went right towards the Walleye Park, right? It doesn't seem like they have that camera. So it sounds like somebody preserved the cameras near the school for some specific reason during that time or that night. Now, if WSU had noticed at some point that somebody had taken something from the chem lab, do you think that their, school police department would have preserved the footage of that area alone, which is why it didn't capture the 270 camera?
I mean, I think if they had known that somebody broke in, like if it was reported at a certain time, and they were able to save the footage, then yeah, I think they would have it. But who knows when they caught the supplies missing and linked it to him? Maybe it was that same week or same time.
It's possible. Mark had theorized that maybe that's why the police department at WSU went out there to go see Bryan Kohberger's car, on the 25th of November. I think that was more part of the investigation. I do think that at some certain point that, Pullman did reach out to the nearby, city and say, hey, can you keep an eye out for this type of vehicle? But I don't know if they preserved the evidence correctly, because that 270 road or Route 270 or the Pullman Washington Highway, Pullman Moscow Highway, there is a camera there, and it should be pretty easily to determine whether or not he turned left or he turned right. And if it wasn't preserved, why were the other ones preserved? Was it because they were investigating something else that happened that night? I think that's a possibility.
It could be a possibility, yeah. And that'd be a good evidence to see which way he turned, if they have it, to prove which way he went.
Yeah. And I know some folks had asked, let me see, I start some things here. Let's welcome Florence White to becoming the newest member.
Hey, Florence, thank you.
Crime Sleuthin says, I remember there was missing 12 minutes or so where he was in the neighborhood near the campus. So here's that real quick. Let's take this off real fast. The comment, and let's put the map back on. So this is where his camera or the vehicle was traveling on North Nevada Street at 2:44 a.m. after his vehicle. This is around the time when his phone turns off as well, right? So he's traveling up this direction, and I believe the WSU Chem Lab is right here at the Simpsons Hall. Yeah, it's right here. So it's literally like if he turned up this direction here, could have parked somewhere and like literally walked there and walked back. Let's measure this out. If he would have parked in this parking lot here, let's get the little ruler out. All right. Here.
Yeah, I'm going to say, because at night, there's not a lot of people at night. So there's got to be camera footage of somebody walking down the, all campuses have to be pretty secure and with cameras nowadays, because, they're all scared of the school shootings and security. So there has to be.
I mean, that's why I'd speculated that he stole an access card to get in. I think that's also what Howard Bloom had stated in the interview, that it was an access card. Now, from this parking lot to the Stetson Hall where where the WSU Chem Lab is less than a tenth of a mile. I mean, let's put it in feet. It's 491 feet. That's not very far. Yards, a little bit over, like, what, football field and a half? That's not too far away, you know?
No, and that's going to be at least a 2-minute walk, 3-minute walk. If you're walking fast.
Right. Sue Joy asks, any cell manipulation to impede, obstruct his movements during the crime hours? Sounds like it. I mean, for 2 solid hours, he wasn't connected to the network. Now, they have his phone, so they should have a reason why it wasn't connected to the network, whether it was he put it in airplane mode because there's a sequence of buttons that you need to press to do so, or if you turned it off, there's a sequence of buttons that needed to do so as well. I'm sure it would take a record of the battery life when the phone died, and I think you could determine, you know, if it was a battery run out, and if it's none of those things, and he went out of service in the middle of Pullman, Washington, where it's the middle of town where service should be the strongest. You know, if he's losing service and nobody else in that area is losing service, then maybe there is some sort of manipulation where whether it's a Faraday cage or, you know, one of those dark bags that you can buy for like $5 on Amazon. Put your phone in there and GPS everything. You're off the grid. So it's quite possible. But yeah, it wasn't too far away. Let's see. The break-in would be deemed to be under WSU campus police jurisdiction. Correct. Which is why I think they've got to bring this into court in the manner that they're doing, you know, under a 404B, because this is a separate investigation that is showing character, possibly intent. You know, if the intent part is here, then the intent part could be the potential chemicals or whatever that was taken. It doesn't have to be chemicals. You know, again, we read let me pull it back up just so that we can go through what exactly is in there.
Yeah, and there's more and more stuff coming out on this case, man. I was watching crime TV this morning, trying to go to bed, and I saw that there's a new investigative show that's coming out, and I think their first episode's over this case. It's like starting next week or something.
Oh, wow. Let me see. I'm trying to find the actual place, facilities and resources. I can't remember what the name of it was for the life of me, but we talked about it not too long ago. It was probably on our, maybe not the last one. I think we talked something different. I think it was like 3 shows ago. Go check that out. We talked about where the actual chem lab is, and we actually looked into what is there, and apparently it's everything, like all supplies and chemicals. So he could have gone in there to get a hazmat suit, some gloves, some booties, masks in preparation to, you know, the mask that he was wearing in there. There's so much that he could have taken in from there that it doesn't have to be the chemical aspect. But if it was things like luminol blue, if you find out that he took luminol and some like blood cleaner stuff, peroxide, things of that nature, do you think that shows suspicious activity?
I mean, that is pretty suspicious to go in the middle of the night to get that, you know, and so close to the case and so close to the incident. It is pretty suspicious. Because, you know, if it was something for class that he needed, he could have properly checked it out instead of stealing somebody's ID badge, if it is true, and breaking in. Because it's open every day. And you just have to put in your request to get your stuff. Like, and that's crazy because, like, as a TA, maybe he could have put in the request like, "Hey, we got something coming up, like a crime scene."
Wouldn't that be suspicious though?
No, because if he would have done it the right way, he could have just ordered extra stuff.
Right, but you have to have a reason to order it. Like he'd have to create some curriculum over the same type of stuff so that he could show that that's the reason why he's using it.
Yeah,
you get what I'm saying? Because if he's just pulling it out, you know, on not like that, but
I thought he does do those party tricks. So
if he's just, you know, pulling out these requests for chemicals, you know, and they're talking about, I don't know, the judicial process of the Fourth Amendment or something, you know, those two things don't make sense. It's going to be kind of odd. Like, hey, why are you asking for these things?
Yeah.
So in order to cover his tracks, he has to take it secretly.
Yeah, but it wasn't so secret if they found it. The
Yeah.
other thing is why? I mean, I know the school is big, but like, he could have just traveled somewhere weeks before, and they bought the supplies somewhere at a Walmart or certain supplies you can buy. You can't buy it all, but you can buy some of it.
Well,
But who knows what he took?
right. Well, we know that he may have purchased some things from places. There's the receipt and the tag for the Dickies jumpsuit at the house. You know, and it is speculated that was used during the crime because, you know, they didn't find it. They didn't find it at his apartment. They didn't find it at his house.
Yeah.
He had just bought it a couple of days before the murders.
Yeah, and
Now,
they sell glove and booties at Walmart, Home Depot. They sell it to construction workers.
right? No, I don't disagree with you there, but this is Moscow, Idaho. It's a smaller area, so it's Pullman. Is it hard to go in there and do a search through Walmart and some of these other places for specific items that would have assisted in the crime? Like, hey, is there a history of somebody, or did somebody purchase, abundance of something? You know how they were looking for the knife? You know, they were doing the search on the knife. They could have done a search on chemicals or things of that nature. And if there's a lot of tools used that you would suspect somebody to use in the crime, I think it could point an arrow there. So, but then again, there was a lot of dumb mistakes, right? This guy wasn't perfect. He made a lot of stupid mistakes. He took his phone with him, left the knife sheath behind, took his own car. Like, you know, I'm surprised people were surprised he got caught, to be honest with you, but the amount of dumb mistakes he made. But this could just be another one in the long list of dumb mistakes that he made. What do you think, Blue?
Yeah, he did a lot of mistakes. I did want to bring this up, and I want to say my condolences to Frenchie 84. That you lost a family member today. You know, my thoughts and prayers are with you and your family. Yeah, but those are some really mistakes that a rookie would have made. You know, if he was with all the knowledge he had, why should have just left his phone at home? You should have practiced the route without a GPS, you know, if you already knew where you're going. You should have, I don't know, left the sheath in the car or something.
Well, I don't think he intended to go on a rampage, right? Howard Bloom makes a great point during our interview. You know, the person goes into the house, goes up the stairs, directly up the stairs, and into Maddie's bedroom. So, you know, Steve said it, you know, he doesn't have to go up. He wouldn't have to go upstairs or something like that. Meaning that if all he wanted to do was go in there and create a massacre or some of that nature, and there wasn't a specific target, he didn't have to go upstairs, right? The fact that he did means that kind of points to that direction, right? He didn't want to be the one to have to say that one of those girls were the targets, but, you know, if they made him, that's what he was going to have to say. You know, that's what all that, in my opinion, was about. And so he goes straight up there and he sees two women in the bed where he's expecting there to be one. Now, the reason why you take the knife sheath in is because you don't want to cut yourself with anything. You know, you don't want to cut your fabric of your clothing. You don't want to cut anything that could come back to you, right? Because let's just say you accidentally cut a piece of your jumpsuit, right? A little piece of fabric. Well, the outside of the fabric might be okay, but the inside of the fabric may have been in contact with your skin. Now there's a little piece of fabric with DNA on it. So, you know, you don't want to, those are mistakes that you can make. So the reason for the sheath is not so that you don't cut yourself. And so I think that, you know, when you hear the description of the injuries, especially in that third floor bedroom, it sounds like, you know, Maddie was first, and it was with precision, is what I believe Howard Bloom used in his terminology in his book, which, from what I understand from my own sources, sounds about accurate. And that there were more violent stabbings with Kaylee, which also with my sources also seems to be very accurate. And the reason why, in my opinion, it was like that, and this is my opinion, is you have two young ladies asleep. The first one would be easier. The second one would wake up. You wouldn't have the opportunity to strike with precision. You're wanting to silence the person as quick as possible. You're going to have, a ferocity of swings to accomplish that. And so, to me, I think it's pretty simple how that all unfolded just by listening to what, the description of the crime scene. You know what I mean, Blue? And so,
Yeah, I mean,
I think in that process, he left the knife sheathed by accident.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that I think definitely it was an accident. I think definitely from 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 what the evidence that's there, that what the way the four were slain, I think there was maybe one primary target, and the two girls sleeping in one bed was a accident. And then I think when he was trying to leave the first time or something, he ran into Ethan and Kate. What's her name? They were together, Ethan and Dana, right, in the same room.
Yeah, I believe he's 100% guilty. By the way, there aren't too many unanswered questions at all. I mean, there's the love is blind thing. You know what I mean, Blue? Where you don't see what's right in front of you. Like when somebody says love is blind, it's not because of the appearance of the other person that you can fall in love with whoever and whatever they look like. Love is blind means that you're blinded and you don't see what's happening right in front of you. That's what's happening here. I mean, the answers are there. To me, this problem is like trying to solve 2 + 2, and you can do it in your head. Some people need to count it on their fingers, and but this seems like a simple problem. What's up, Big Blue?
No, I was gonna say, I think that's why he made that mistake, and maybe he hurt somebody down, or maybe when he turned around because he thought he forgot it, somebody came out, and somebody got startled and woken up, because you hear Dylan's testimony saying that she heard somebody say, "I think somebody's in the house," or something like that. It's been a while since I read that part of the case, but to me it seems like the other two victims were just like opportunity crime, because they weren't intent.
Right. So Red Metal says, wasn't there a federal grand jury? If so, he would have been charged with the bomb making, and it seems like the federal grand jury went anywhere. It's kind of like with what's his name, Murdoch. He had a 404B stuff put into place, and it happened to do with his financial crimes and stuff, right? Yeah. Now, you didn't see him being tried for both crimes at the same time. And the reason behind that is because it wouldn't be fair to the defendant to have to defend multiple different types of crimes at the same time. He wouldn't be able to put his attention to one crime at a time to defend himself, especially if they weren't necessarily connected. You know what I mean? And so because he hasn't been, and he could have been charged. Charges could have been there. I mean, it's more than likely possible. And it's just under a gag order and it's sealed. There's a lot of stuff that the prosecution has sealed. And it's filled with sealed documents there. Prosecution is the one that stated they have 404B. Now, according to his arrest history prior to his arrest, the only thing he had was when he stole a phone when he was a teenager. I doubt they're going to use that, because how does that play into this? Unless he threatened to kill somebody with a knife during that encounter. You know what I mean, Blue?
Yeah. So, and it was something where we kind of heard the story where he sold it at the mall on his kiosk, and
yeah,
and I think
$200.
The dad pressed the charges and that.
Yeah. So the murders were a hit. Oh my gosh. Why would anybody hit these 4 students and then also frame Bryan Kohberger for it. Like, so here's the thing. In order for something like that to have happened, there would have had to have been a connection between Bryan Kohberger and the victims by this person who wanted to kill these 4 victims and at the same time frame Bryan Kohberger. Because in order for any of this to have worked, Bryan Kohberger's DNA would have had to have been on that knife sheath at the time of collection, because it was collected by the Idaho State Lab and it was taken to the Idaho State Lab where the DNA profile was collected off of the knife sheath, and a CODIS, and it was entered into CODIS, said profile, and it was in a national database. So the DNA on Bryan Kohberger, from Bryan Kohberger on the sheath, would have had to have happened during or before the murders. And if there was somebody there that knew Bryan Kohberger and also the victims, wouldn't that be a connection? Didn't Bryan Kohberger's defense say there is no connection? I mean, you guys say it all the time, you know, Ann Taylor said this or Ann Taylor said that. Everything she says is gold. Well, take that, my man.
I don't believe the hit part, because it would be either way more messier or they wouldn't have left any evidence behind, like the knife sheath. Those guys are professionals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Even if they weren't professionals, I read a story about, or I saw the documentary and video of this one hitman that's on trial for like 80-something murders. He was a cartel hitman.
Right.
And he would leave evidence behind. He wasn't in the records. The only reason why they ever caught him was because he kind of confessed to the guy's mom, because it was his best friend that he ended up killing. This is a crazy dude, and I guess they were drinking. They got into a little argument about the truck. He ended up killing his own friend and going and burying him. And she felt bad because the mom kept coming by asking to see if he knew where he was at, and so he ended up taking him to the body, and then ended up turning him in.
Oh wow!
But I don't know. Yeah, it was a crazy story, man.
Yeah, there's some crazy stuff that happens all the time, man. Like people do some crazy stuff, and it's not just always the person that you can pick out in the room, right? Like the Ted Bundys of the world, who a lot of people couldn't believe that he did it because he was charming, because he was, you know, he was going to be a future lawyer. He had everything going for him. You know, this guy wasn't socially awkward. He was the opposite. And yet in his spare time, he was doing some tormented stuff. You know what I mean? All right. Crime Sleuth then comes in with a comment saying that what if the Dickies receipt were for shoes? Dickies sell shoes at Walmart and have a diamond pattern. Did you know that, Blue?
I've never seen the Dickies shoes. I know they sell shirts, overalls, and pants, and like undershirts, but I've never seen the shoes. But maybe. But then it's simple. They would just run the code on the receipt, and it tells you exactly what they bought.
Dude, it does kind of look alike. The little diamond pattern.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna lie. What if it were for shoes? I wonder how much they are at Walmart. Let me see how much. Dickies shoes, Walmart. Yeah. If they come out at $49.99, that'll be interesting. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they would be like work shoes, kind of. I know they sell work shoes, but I'm always thinking of Walmart Brazos brand.
Right.
When I was a young construction worker, a long time ago, I bought those boots because I didn't have a lot of money back then. And worst decision, I think after my first paycheck, I went and bought myself a good pair of Carhartts or something, because my feet hurt every night when I got home doing electrical for 10-hour shifts, you know.
Jeez, Will.
Yeah, I used to do it.
You're a madman.
Yeah, I used to work from 6 to 6, but it was always like 2 hours, 1 hour driving to the job, so 1 hour back. But the faster we ran through houses, wiring them up, the more money we made. So we did 2 houses a day. If there were single stories, there were 2 stories. We wired them up in 2 days. So Just me and my brother running through these houses like crazy. But happens, man.
So I'm not seeing anything in this Walmart online. The only Dickie shoes they have are more like, I'll pull them up real quick, are like this, which is different. I saw the sole of these, and these are 62. So the other ones, it could be. It definitely could be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean they just have to run the SKU number and they know exactly what it is. So I guess what they call it, the SKU.
Huh. Be crazy. I don't know. They were pretty confident in vans, at least on the PCA, but at one point they thought it was the car was a 2019 Sentra, so maybe things had changed over time. You know, more looking into, not so much that the evidence changed, but more evidence comes in. You can, like for instance, with the car, you can tell right away, based on the information that they knew, that the only footage they had were from profiles of the vehicle. They thought it was a 2019 Sentra. You know, if it was a front angle view of it, it would be difficult to determine that type of stuff. Now, the one camera view they would have had that would have kind of captured the front end, maybe even the back end, is the one from the 1122 or 1112 King Road residence, the one that's next door with the screw-in window, screw-in camera. You know, the Elantra comes in through that intersection quite a few times, right? And so I think that might be it, but yeah, I don't know how that camera would reflect lights, you know, if a vehicle turned onto it, because when a vehicle is coming down that road and it turns, the headlights are going to strike that camera dead on. I don't know how that camera would react to that if they can determine, you know, characteristics. Now, as more camera footage comes in, you can see that, all right, you know, this vehicle went this way, and from this camera, it's a lot clearer. You can tell that this is what it is. So, you know, the fact that they changed it from a 2019 Sentra to a 2013 Elantra to a 2015 Elantra, or 14 to 16, just kind of tells you that they got clearer and clearer evidence as they started to investigate it, which is something that you would expect. You know, you would expect more evidence to be collected as an investigation continues, especially if the person is guilty. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think now that they got their venue change, hopefully this court case gets on the way.
Yeah.
And so that's better. Get a lot of answers out there and get these grieving families some I guess some judge, not judgment, some, how do you call it? I'm trying to think in my head. Get them their peace and justice. Yeah.
Yeah. So Red Metal says if he was in his car all that time with the jumpsuit, I believe he would be getting his DNA all over himself. So I think there would have been more than just a simple touch DNA at the scene. That's if he put his jumpsuit on before he entered the car. You know, there's a sound of a horn at 4:07 when he's coming back around. You know, I think he's picking up a bag and putting it in his lap, and then he hit the horn by accident. Now, what's in that bag probably is his kill kit. You know, it's probably the jumpsuit, probably the shoes, the gloves that he's going to be wearing inside there. This guy planned for a lot of things, right? At the end of the day, you know, these murders aren't make believe. They did not happen. These things happen, and the only evidence that was left from the perpetrator was DNA on a knife sheath. And the reason we know that, because if there was skin cells underneath the fingernails or blood or sweat or hair anywhere on the scene, that would have been stronger evidence than touch DNA on the knife sheath. And so that would have been the evidence that would have been to determine if, you know, they had probable cause to arrest him versus the weaker evidence of the touch DNA. So somebody did this. Somebody had to have committed the crime. Somebody had to have been driving around in that white vehicle, whether it be Bryan Kohberger's Elantra or somebody else's white vehicle. You know, that vehicle was seen going into a one-way in, one-way out area, and goes back and forth. And during the time that the murders happened, that vehicle had entered into the area. And then shortly after the murders are believed to have occurred. That vehicle is seen leaving that one way in, one way out area at a high rate of speed. So based on what you're saying, instead of saying and thinking, hey, it couldn't have been Bryan Kohberger because there would have been more DNA there, you have to realize that somebody did commit this crime. How did they commit this crime without having the DNA everywhere? Well, that means obviously they would have had to have put on their suit prior to entering into the house. Makes sense, Blue? Makes sense?
Yeah. I thought they did get the change of venue. I read on a report when I was reading the news the other day, but maybe they got the court hearing for it.
Yeah, they had the court hearing, and the judge was like, "No, I'm not ready. He acted like he didn't know that that's what that that hearing was for."
No.
Yeah. He's like, "This is going to take a while for me to make the hardest decision of my life." Like, dude, you should have been prepared to make this decision. Like, you knew what this trial was for, or this hearing was for. I didn't like that, to be honest with you. But yeah, there's nothing there about that yet.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. My bad.
Let's see. I'm behind, but Bryan Kohberger's classmate said on Reddit, yes, they are real. She didn't like him, avoided him, didn't want to mention something that might come out in court. I'm guessing she might testify. It's a possibility. There's a lot of people who I think that are going to end up testifying, when it comes to Bryan Kohberger's character and some of the things he was doing. I mean, what do we know already? We know that he was fired as a TA, right? There had to be reasons. We know that there's letters of escalation and of things that have occurred throughout the short span of that semester, up until the point where he got terminated at the end. So there's a history there. It's got to be documented in efforts to fire him. You have to have that stuff documented. And it's not going to be a one-off situation. There's probably multiple situations, probably multiple people who have reported some similar events for it to get to the degree of his termination within one semester. So yeah, I'm pretty sure everybody and anybody that was associated with that at WSU is going to be testifying against Bryan Kohberger. Did you see any of the Robert Tell's trial? Stabbed a guy and got in his car, didn't change clothes. They didn't find any blood DNA from the victim. He was arrested in 5 days. I have not. I need to look into that one. I remember you mentioning that last time we were live. I need to look into that. I know there's one Porco, something like that. Porco out in Rochester, New York, drove 3 hours away from his dorm, killed his father, attempted to kill his mother, did it with an axe. He stood over them. There was no sign of a cleanup at the house. There was no sign of anybody taking a shower there or any of those type of things. And he got back in his vehicle and drove 3 hours back to his dorm. And when they grabbed his vehicle, they couldn't find any DNA in it either, or blood or any of those things. Yeah. They speculated because he was a nurse or a vet tech at a place where they conducted surgeries on animals, and he had access to equipment that would protect, the nurses and the surgeons from any type of blood or any of those type of things during the surgery process.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing that people sometimes don't get is if the blood spatters on you, it doesn't mean it's going to drip all over your car because it soaks into the fabric.
Yeah.
The dry cells might flake off, but that won't be for a little bit of time. And it's excessive blood. And from the crime scene, it could have been excessive blood. But to me, if he was wearing a jumpsuit and booties, he takes that off and he ain't got nothing else on that would expose the blood to his car. Especially if he bags it right away. It takes a second to get out of a jumpsuit, like 10 seconds. Take booties off, it takes less than 2 seconds. And you're wearing gloves and a mask. And the jumpsuit's got long sleeves. None of your orifices that are exposed after you take all that off, get in your car with your shirt, shorts, shoes, and socks, ain't gonna have any blood on it.
No. Catherine says the car in the video has a sunroof. One, you're looking at the wrong video at the wrong time.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not
The-
the Mercedes car. I think if I
Not,
remember right.
yeah, no, BMW. I think it was
BMW.
it was a big BMW. Somebody, one of these pro burgers, took a picture of it from a weird angle, and they said, "Oh, look at this Elantra. It's not even down the wrong. Is down the wrong street, like at midnight, 4 hours before the murders happen. A BMW goes into a street. What I would say, what 2 football fields away, 200 yards away." Goes
Yeah.
down a street 200 yards away, turns around and goes back and leaves away from the murder house. And a pro burger went in there and took a snapshot of a picture of the vehicle at a certain angle where it looked like it was a car, and that it could have been the car seen on the footage. But quickly after and before, like it's just one snapshot where it somewhat looks similar. The next 2 seconds and the two, like anything like two,
Yeah. If you actually
you can
watch
tell.
the actual video, we did a
Yeah.
break on it, and you can see it's not a.
Yeah, I laughed so hard when I found out how, when that video was taken, and the fact that you have these folks who are willing to fabricate stuff in order to believe that Bryan Kohberger is innocent and to trick you. I'm sorry, Catherine, that it got you, but to trick people into thinking that Bryan Kohberger is innocent. It's funny. It's weird. It's crazy. I apologize, Catherine, that you fell for that.
That car
So-
did have a sunroof, but it wasn't his car. Yeah, we did do the video on that one.
Yeah. And here's the thing, though. So there's that. We've gotten that screenshot footage right from 1112 King Road, where you can see the King Queen Road intersection, and you can see it's from the porch, and it's from the camera from the light screw.
Night bulb, yeah, night bulb.
So it's from an elevated area. And what do you really think the cops are doing in that moment? Like, oh my God, we got a sunroof in this picture. Hopefully nobody notices it. Or do you think that they don't see that? Like, seriously, come on. I mean, the amount of brain cells you have to lose in order to believe that.
The
is
one that was
incredible.
harder to determine was the gas station video, because it was a reflection.
Yeah,
of
that
the
one you
phone
can't
on
tell
there.
anything.
That one's hard to tell.
For sure.
But if you watch the original footage, it might be easier to tell. Like I was watching a funny video earlier where the guy was at the gas station and the cop pulled him over. He's like, "Why'd you pull me over?" He's like, "Because you turned from the wrong lane. You turned from the second lane into the gas station. You cut all these people off." "No, I cut in the right lane." So they went to the gas station. Clerk is like, "You got footage of the street?" He's like, "Yeah." And then he showed him right there. He's like, "Look, that's why I'm giving you a ticket, because you cut in from the second lane."
Yeah.
So those cameras can zoom in. That was a good example of them zooming in. And the cop's like, "No, zoom out. I can see the car better when you zoom out."
Mm-hmm. Right. And the Elantra video that is out there, right, is the one that's from the Linda Lane footage. You can't tell anything from that video either. I would anyone saying that vehicle is definitely this or that, and that's a reach, right? That's not the footage that they're using, though, to determine Bryan Kohberger's car, right? That's not the footage for that. So what that footage tells us is it shows us the route that this person went once they left the view of right in front of the the resident's house. Now I know they have view right in front of the house because they have video of him trying to park and do a 3-point turn right there in front of the house. He couldn't do it, so he had to go to the King Queen Road intersection, turn around, and come back. And so what that does is complete the rest of the story of where he went, because you can clearly see that vehicle goes around the apartment complex and heads right back to the victim's house. If that camera didn't belong there, Bryan Kohberger could have said, "Oh no, man, I went back there and I was hanging out at one of these apartments there." Well, you can clearly see that's not the case, and that he's traveling back towards the victim's house. And The other thing that vehicle does that I think is going to be huge in this case is the fact that he's parked there for a brief moment. Remember, right before he goes in and does his final wraparound, he stops. He actually goes back. And if you picked up at the PCA, this is when he's doing that 3-point turn stuff. But before he gets there, he stops. I think it is like 507, Queen Apartment 507. He pulls in, stops for about 12 seconds. Then he reverses and he turns the wheel. So when he turns the wheel stationary, what ends up happening is you're going to leave tire compound onto the ground. Now you have a time, date, and spot of where that vehicle was when the tire turned based on that camera. So if you're able to go to that location, we all remember the videos of them picking up tire treads and collecting tire compounds from the floor. Let's just say they didn't get this video until a week or so later after the murders. What they can do is go back through their pictures of all the tire marks that they took and collect it and compare it to the one that they have on the video to determine which one it was that was left there. And if that tire compound comes back to the same compound that's associated with Bryan Kohberger's tires, the guy's done for. You know what I mean, Blue?
Yeah. No, I just wanted to compare. I had a nice comparison in my head when I was thinking half of the Kohbergers, they must have all been Amber Heard fans. They all believed that she was an innocent little angel until they found out she liked taking shits on beds. So I think you'll look into Bryan more and you'll find out that he probably did the same in the privacy of his own home. But
yeah. And there's more than just that difference. If you look at that it's the second Linda Lane footage that one's on, and it's for the actual street Linda Lane that's further down, right? And there's the video of some guy going to a dumpster and either looking in or taking peeing or whatever. I don't know what he's doing in that one, but this is again 200 yards away from the murder house. Like, this isn't the dumpster right next door, right? And these aren't associated with anything that has to do with the crime. I have some other folks that will tell me, oh man, there was a guy that stole a sign earlier that night. I'm like, so what does the sign stealing have to do with this case? I don't understand where your connection is. I don't understand how you're connecting a dot from a guy stealing a sign somewhere else in town at a different time. I don't see how you connect that dot, but you can't connect the dots between Bryan Kohberger's phone being off during the time of the murders, his vehicle being seen on camera, or a vehicle very similar to his down to the front license plate missing, the fact that his DNA is in the house under the body of a victim on a weapon sheath, on the knife sheath that was brought in by the killer. Like, you can't connect those dots. Those don't make sense. They don't add up. But somehow somebody stealing a sign drunk somewhere in a different part of Moscow, that connection, that ties. I don't understand the logic behind those things. You know what I mean, Blue?
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, but everybody has a right to their opinion. Everybody's gonna, and that's why everybody gets a fair trial, and that's what they're trying to do for him. That's why there's a gag order. Because the more evidence that does go out there, the more presumably, I think it's going to be bad for him. But we don't know. It could be the other way around. It could be totally wrong, and but if he walks, and then it's one of those things where we don't know until it goes to trial. We don't know what other evidence the defense has, the prosecution has. But then, to me, it seems like he's the guy. He's the right guy. But that's my opinion. Everybody has the right to their opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I mean, when it comes to like facts, and there's did he do it or not? Is there evidence that points in that direction, or is there not? And I think that trumps an opinion of something based on non-facts, based on, oh yeah, I think the police framed him, and not answering with how, why, or what, like without any evidence of such. just that they can only answer the fact that Bryan Kohberger didn't do it. And if he didn't do it, they had to have put his DNA there. It's the only thing that makes sense. And to them, not to me. And I don't know. I mean, I guess you're right. Everybody has a right to their opinion. But some of these opinions can be pretty crazy, man. But you're right. You're right. Let's get those likes up. Let's get them up. Let's get them up. We appreciate that. Hit that subscribe button while you're at it as well. Okay, Daniel and Blue, why do you think the evidence tape inside of the windows in Bethany's bedroom? I mean, I don't know, to be honest, but I think it could be on the outside of the window. You know, there was a lot of people in that house, you know, the night before. And so they're probably going to check everything and everyone, you know, all the handprints or whatever may have been found or been left even the night before. Right. Even if it has nothing to do with in relation to the crime that night, let's just say it shows that the perpetrator was there the night before also. And if you can't find his DNA anywhere else, that also tells you that he wasn't there during the party and that's not how his DNA got into the house. Makes him thus more likely that he came in contact with the sheath versus, you know, it was picked up as somebody, you know, the killer entered the house. He was there the night before. And, you know, you answer those questions. You know what I mean?
I mean, I think it's there because in any crime like this, until you find out the actual evidence of where he got in from, if they're going to put evidence tape on all over the house to block it off so nobody touches it, so nobody contaminates the scene. Especially, like, say maybe her window was a little cracked open, and they're gonna be, oh man, maybe he broke in through here. Just tape it off. But you know, if she was asleep in there, he would have unalived her. So then that theory is out the window. Our first theory when we started the show was he crawled in through a window. Remember? Or he crawled into the balcony. That was our first thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of things that could have happened. You know, there wasn't a lot of information that went out in the beginning. So there was a lot of speculation, which is why and Chief Fry wanted everybody to get a hold of the probable cause affidavit so they can see what the truth was, so that teachers and neighbors and professors wouldn't be wrongfully blamed for things, and they could find out what the truth was and connect the dots pretty easily, you know. But you know, I guess not so much for some. I don't know. Sears Black comes in with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Sears Black. You're always hooking us up with everything, you know, being a mod, being a member, you know, donating to the show. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. She says, thank you for the best live tonight. Great to have Blue with us too. Yeah, it is great. Blue's probably going to be going, you know, just so everybody is on the right page, because of Blue's work and stuff. He's probably going to be coming on maybe once a week, and maybe sometimes he might have to miss a week or two, but he'll be here as much as he can. Is that right, Blue?
Yeah, I got a busy schedule. I'm moving out of my house. I got, you know, I still work full time, and then it's a lot of stuff, man.
Daniel,
I try to make it every once in a while, at least maybe once a week or every other week. I'll see. There's my schedule. I mean, like I said, this past week, there's 3 days I had something booked, and I was getting 3.5 hours sleep a day. And to try to study and try to remember all this stuff, 3.5 hours is not good on my memory to remember everything. So
true. Nunya asks, why does everyone think he entered through the slider of the bottom door was seen wide open? So I think that when it comes to eyewitnesses, things can be said wrongly by accident. There was this whole conspiracy that Tupac was still alive after his shooting in 1996 because a person that witnessed the crime said that he was taken by helicopter instead of ambulance, and she meant ambulance. I think she's talked about it since, bringing up that it was an ambulance that she had seen. But out of the nervousness and talking to the media and thinking they're, she's gonna be on TV, this is something crazy, a lot of people were talking about this, she said the wrong thing. Chief Fry says he does not know anything about the front door being open, but he says in 2 occasions that when they showed up, the door was still open. And so they suspect that he left through the back sliding glass door. So I'm assuming that ended up being the case. I have a couple of sources close to the case that have told me that the theory at one point, I can't tell you what it was or what it is at the time of arrest or any of those things, but at one point the thought was that Bryan Kohberger entered the back sliding glass door and left the door open, never touched it again. Once he walked in, he walked out of that open glass door and left it open the entire night. So Chief Fry says 2 occasions door was left open, and in 2 different occasions he says he knows nothing about it being the front door. So if it wasn't the front door, probably was the back door. What do you think, Blue?
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I know the theory's always been that the sliding glass door was open, but in some of the reports, people were saying it was the front door left open, but it could have been left open when the police got there.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, man. It's one of that. I've always been like going through my head, like, is that why somebody said somebody might be here because the back door is wide open?
Yeah.
You know, in Dylan's statements, that's always running through my head too.
Catacomb Man says, I'm still waiting for Daniel, 50K subscriber, promise to take his sunglasses off. I've done it already, my man. I actually scratched my eye by accident, taking off my contacts, but I'll do it again. I want the pro burgers to look into my eyes when I say he's guilty. Let's see. Drunkturkeyshow, best channel on YouTube. Appreciate that. Justine Oki coming in with the $2 super chat. Let's see. The PCA tells us the sliding door was the suspect's exit point, but doesn't comment whether it was the entry point. I thought it did, but I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it did, that he entered through the back sliding glass door, but I may have heard that from somewhere else. She was in his car. If you're talking about Bethany and Kohberger's car, I'm assuming, wouldn't that be a connection that they're denying exists? And if Bethany knew him, that would be an explanation for his DNA in the house or anywhere near the car, and thus would why wouldn't they bring that up by now? You know, and it's not like the prosecution or the defense, when they wanted to talk to her, said that she has exculpatory evidence, or it's that something that she may have seen or heard could be exculpatory because she's the only one that could have heard or seen this information. So it's not that she knew this person. None of those things came into play from the defense side. They have never said that. That's been some sort of pro burger fantasy that they knew that. So interesting stuff. Daniel trolling. I troll sometimes. I'm not gonna lie. But I don't troll on anybody else's channel. I really don't. I think on another YouTube channel that I don't support. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I don't have similar thoughts of in a while. I've stayed off the pro burger train for a minute. So I don't. If there's some trolling going on in other channels, it ain't me. I don't have no problem saying who I am either. So. Like if somebody wants to say that I'm scared to say something or whatever the case may be, I come at, oh, say Drunkturkeyshow says this. It's done. I've done it before. I've gotten blocked in a couple of places. It is what it is. All righty. So for those who weren't here earlier or just catching in, we were talking about a couple of trials that are going to be upcoming. The prosecution stated that are prejudicial to Bryan Kohberger, and these are going to be based off of 404 rule, which Idaho Rule of Evidence 404, character evidence, crimes of other acts. And this was a 404B, which is crimes, wrongdoings of other acts, prohibited uses, evidence of crimes, wrongdoing, other act is not admissible to prove a person's character in order to show that on a particular occasion the person acted in accordance with character. Permitted use notice in a criminal case, the evidence may be admissible for another purpose, such as proving motive, opportunity, intent, preparation. That's a big one. Preparation. right? That's a big one, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Plan, knowledge, identity, absence of mistake or lack of accident in a criminal case. So, in the end, they have other charges or other crimes that he may have been committing that they plan to use in trial to show character, planning, preparation, motive, opportunity, and means. Everything that you guys have been asking for. That's going to end up happening in a trial that we're in a hearing that is going to end up being not, we ain't going to be able to know about it. It's going to be behind private doors because it's going to be sealed for Bryan Kohberger's protection. Remember, this isn't for the protection of the prosecution. The prosecution is still upholding Bryan Kohberger's Constitution right to a fair trial, and they're trying to do what they can to accomplish that. And by doing so, they're not asking for these things to not be sealed. I believe it's the prosecution who's asking for a lot of these trials or these hearings that are not going to go into favor of Bryan Kohberger to be sealed because they don't want that out there yet. That doesn't have to happen until trial. All right, Blue, do you have any final words for everybody before we take off?
No, I just wanted to say thank you, everybody. And I just want to say my condolences goes out to, man, I forgot her screen name. I know I saved it on there. For losing her aunt today.
Yeah.
My condolences go out. I don't know her name. I have to go back.
Yeah. Now, again, our condolences. I remember. Thank you, guys. We'll be back on maybe Thursday. I think Thursday is going to be our new show day, at least for myself. I might come on maybe Tuesday. We'll see what happens. But for sure, Thursday, I'll be back on. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. If you haven't been getting notifications of our lives, you may have to unsub and then sub right back on and ring that bell, and you'll make sure that you get those notifications so when we're on. You guys have a safe Labor Day weekend. We want to see you back next time.
And if y'all have to work like me, well, hopefully the overtime pay is worth it.
100%. Have a great night.
Take care, guys.